How do you heal from something that never should have happened? James O'Barr's The Crow doesn't start with a story, it starts with a wound, a real one. Before it became one of the most iconic independent comics of the late 80s and early 90s, before it became a cult film, before it became a tragedy myth of its own, The Crow was grief on paper, inked in sorrow, stitched together from pain. O'Barr began it after the death of his fiancée, who was killed by a drunk driver. He didn't write to move on, he didn't write to heal, he wrote to survive, and that's what makes The Crow so haunting. Not the supernatural vengeance, not the makeup or the violence, but the unspoken truth behind every panel, that this isn't fantasy, it's mourning. Because before it was a comic, The Crow was a love story shattered by loss. O'Barr didn't create it to entertain or to inspire revenge fantasies. He created it because the person he loved was gone and he didn't know what else to do. What came out wasn't a superhero story or even a horror story. It was a howl, a confession, a desperate act of survival inked into existence. And that's what gives the book its power. The violence doesn't carry catharsis. The revenge doesn't deliver satisfaction. What you feel instead is ache, the silence between panels, the scream that never escapes. Because The Crow isn't about revenge, it's about what's left after. It's about the grief that builds in your bones when the person you love is taken from you, and how sometimes, no matter how hard you scream, the world never answers back. The world in the book itself reflects that pain. The city of The Crow doesn't fall apart, it already has. It's a place that feels like a bruise that never healed. Buildings jet out like broken bones. Streets drown in shadow. The skyline looks like it's forgotten how to cry. The air feels heavy, like it remembers every scream it's ever heard. And in the middle of it all is Eric Draven. Once a man in love, now something else entirely. Something hollow, something that moves because it can't stop. We don't really meet him as a victim, or even as the ghost he appears to be, but as a question, a figment of what grief leaves behind. The story doesn't unfold as much as it unravels. Fragments of memory, shards of nightmares, and flashes of love that no longer belongs to the living. O'Barr's storytelling is fragmented, deliberately disorienting. One moment Eric is stalking through the rain, killing a man who destroyed his life. The next, he's lying in bed beside Shelley, remembering the way she smiled. The past and present bleed into each other until you can't tell which is which. And that's the point, because that's what grief does. One moment you're numb, the next you're drowning in a memory you didn't ask for. O'Barr structures the comic like the mind of someone who's lost too much. Circular, chaotic, and impossible to escape. Eric is trapped in the same loop. Relive the memory, punish the world, break down, and start again. The book never lets you rest, because Eric can't rest. He's not a hero, not a savior. He's a ghost that won't stop moving because stopping means remembering. Every act of violence in The Crow is brutal, but never cathartic. Eric's vengeance isn't justice, it's ritual, a compulsion that keeps him moving when everything else has stopped. Each kill should bring him closer to release, but it only sharpens the pain. The revenge doesn't heal him or bring her back. It just reminds him why he can't stop. Because The Crow isn't about closure, it's about what happens when closure is impossible. The captions that run through the story feel like diary entries, fragments of songs, torn poetry. They read like thoughts O'Barr couldn't say out loud, and that's because they are. Eric's words are O'Barr's words. His grief is the artist's grief. There's no distance between the two. The result is something intimate and unsettling, a comic that feels like an open wound pressed to the page. And at the center of it all is love, not as redemption, but as torment. Eric and Shelley's relationship only exists in flashbacks, yet it's the heart of everything. Their moments together are drawn differently from the rest of the book. Softer pencil lines, lighter compositions, those pages breathe, and that breath makes the rest of the book hurt more. Shelley isn't a symbol or a plot device, she's the life Eric can't return to. There's purity in the way he remembers her, but that purity becomes poison. The more idolized she becomes, the lesser he can let go. His love becomes the thing that traps him, freezing him between life and death. In most stories, love saves. but in The Crow, love is the thing that won't let him die. The surface plot is simple enough. Urk and Shelley are murdered by a group of thugs. Urk rises from the grave, guided by a supernatural crow, to take revenge. But that's just the framework. The real story happens in the space between. Urk doesn't just kill, he remembers. Obsessively and helplessly. Shelley's laugh, her voice, her final horrific moments. The narrative loops through hallucination, poetry, memory, violence, all blending into a single fever dream of grief. Because Urk isn't trying to save anyone, he's trying to keep her alive, even if it means tearing himself apart to do it. The book flirts with the idea that revenge might fix something, that maybe if Urk kills the right people, balances the scales, the pain might fade, but it never does. Every victory feels hollow, every death echoes the same silence, because there is no balance, there's no redemption, just the echo of what used to be and the unwillingness to forgive himself. And that's the lie that lives inside The Crow, the illusion of closure, the belief that violence can make the world right again. O'Barr lets you believe it for a while, just long enough to feel the pull, and then he rips it away. The closer Urk gets to finishing his vengeance, the emptier he becomes. The story doesn't move towards peace, it moves towards nothingness. Even the Crow, the supernatural force guiding him, isn't a savior, it's a tether, a function, a reminder that he can't move on unless he forgives himself for not being able to save Shelley, yet he won't. But there are other ghosts in this world besides Urk, the living kind. Shuri, the young girl caught in a life of neglect and despair, is one of the few lights that pierces the darkness. She's surrounded by addiction and violence, too young to escape it, too innocent to fully understand it. Urk's act of kindness towards her, giving her Shelley's ring, offering a brief moment of safety, is small, but it matters. It's one of the few times his actions reach beyond his own grief. Shelley is gone, but Shuri is still here. And in that moment, Urk becomes something other than vengeance. He becomes human again, if only for a page. Meanwhile, Officer Albrecht is one of the few living souls who still feels real in The Crow. A wary Detroit cop just trying to do his job. He finds Urk at the scene of Gideon's murder and watches a ghost masquerading as a man. What begins as a standoff turns into something more human. He doesn't shoot Urk, just listens to him as he speaks of the sadness in Albrecht's heart, and tells him to return to the wife he left behind, and later asks him through a note to look after Shuri. Albrecht can't stop the violence, but he chooses compassion. In a world built on grief, he's proof that mercy can still exist. Even the gang members carry a kind of thematic weight. They aren't complex villains, they're empty, thoughtless men driven by cruelty and boredom. They kill because they can. They destroy because it means nothing to them. There's no real ringleader, no mastermind pulling the strings. Just a cluster of human voids. And that's what makes them horrifying. Against people so hollow, Urk's vengeance feels meaningless. How do you avenge Shelley's life against men who don't even value their own? Each confrontation drains him further. Each kill pulls him further from the love he's trying to honor. The act becomes small, unworthy of the grief that created it. Then there's the Skull Cowboy, a figure who doesn't guide or comfort so much as remind. Like the Crow itself, he's death, or what's left of it, still tethered to Urk like a shadow that won't fade. When he appears, it isn't to explain anything, it's to reclaim something. He stands as a reminder that this new life Urk has isn't truly his. It still belongs to death. And every step he takes, every act of vengeance he commits, is time borrowed from the Reaper. The Skull Cowboy is that awareness given form. The cold truth that Urk hasn't escaped death's reach. He's part of it now. And O'Barr's art captures all of this through contrast and chaos. His pages are jagged, inconsistent, and raw. Some bleed with thick black ink. Others are ghostly sketches barely holding together. The art isn't meant to be clean, it's meant to hurt. Some pages look like fever dreams, others like therapy sessions he's trying to run from. The shifts in style aren't just aesthetic, they're emotional. When Urk remembers Shelley, the lines soften, the shadows lift, for a moment the world breathes again, and then, without warning, grief rips it away. The black and white palette reflects the emotional extremes, love and death, tenderness and violence, what was and what's gone. Every page feels haunted because it is. You can feel O'Barr's hand in every line, his pain in every shadow. The art doesn't just depict Urk's suffering, it is his suffering. And yet, even through all the darkness, There's something fragile here. A sliver of humanity that refuses to die. Shuri's innocence, Albrecht's weary decency, the faint possibility that compassion, even in a world drenched in grief, might still mean something. That maybe love can outlast even the worst of it. Not to heal, but to remember. But the crow never truly lies to you. It never pretends that love fixes everything. It shows you the truth. That some wounds never close, and some ghosts never leave. Revenge doesn't heal, it just gives you something to do while you're drowning. That true healing begins with forgiveness. But can you truly ever forgive yourself for an act you never truly could have stopped in the first place? That's what makes The Crow endure. It's not a revenge story, it's not a horror comic, it's a grief story, a trauma story, a desperate attempt to make pain make sense. O'Barr doesn't offer closure, he rejects it. He gives us ghosts and says they don't go away. He gives us vengeance and says it doesn't help. He gives us love and asks what happens when even that isn't enough. Because closure is the lie we tell ourselves so we can keep living. But some wounds stay open. Some people never come back. And some stories refuse to let us look away from that truth. What O'Barr created wasn't a superhero comic. It was a memorial, a scream, a love letter written in broken glass, a testament to the pain of still being here when someone else isn't. And when the story ends, when the last body falls and the revenge runs out, and the silence finally sets in, we're left with the same question that started it all. How do you heal from something that never should have happened? You don't. You carry it, you live with it, and somehow you survive. Because The Crow was never written to entertain. It was written to help a man survive. And you don't walk away from something like that. You just carry it with you. Thanks for watching, everyone. This one was a bit heavier than usual, but The Crow has been a book I've loved since I was a teenager. And while I adore the original film adaptation, I've always felt that no version has ever captured the raw emotion O'Barr poured onto the page. It's a comic that hits harder the more you read it, one that lingers with you long after you've put it down, and one that I read nearly every single year. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of my other ones, and hit like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any new ones I've got coming up. And remember, whether it's a single issue or a trade, there's always another page to turn. So keep reading, and I'll see you next time.